90% of people who try to meditate quit within 2 weeks. Not 2 months, 2 weeks. And I used to be one of them, even though I was prescribing it to my patients every single day. 3 years, 3 full years, I wrote meditate 20 minutes daily on my prescription pad, while privately failing at it completely. I'd sit down, close my eyes, try to be present, and within 45 seconds, my brain was calculating grocery costs, replaying a 2019 argument, and somehow wondering if I'd locked the car. I felt like a fraud in my own field. And then, a researcher I deeply respect showed me a study, a mechanism, a 4-minute window, and everything I thought I knew about calming the mind turned upside down. By the time this is over, you won't just understand why traditional meditation fails you. You'll have a physical, biological tool that works, even when your brain refuses to cooperate. Stay right here. This one is important. We take the breath so we can grow the life. Welcome to MindTake. I'm Dr. Silas Kincaid, and this channel exists to give you the science, the tools, and the real talk to build a mind that works for you, not against you. Here is exactly what you are going to walk away with today. 5 things. 1. You will understand why the silence of meditation feels like a battle, and why that battle is not your fault. 2. You will know the specific neurological reason clearing your mind is an outdated instruction that was never going to work. 3. You will understand what the vagus nerve actually does and why 240 seconds is the precise biological tipping point. 4. You will have the exact 4-minute technique, the 4-4-6 reset, that you can use today, at your desk, on a bus, anywhere. 5. You will have a concrete, trackable metric to prove it is working within 30 days. No yoga mat, no quiet room, no meditation app subscription. Let's build this. If you have ever tried to meditate and failed, I need you to hear this clearly. You did not fail meditation. Meditation failed you. I say that not to be provocative. I say it because the data backs it up. Research consistently shows that somewhere between 70 and 90% of first-time meditators abandon the practice within 2 weeks. That is a catastrophic failure rate for something sold as the ultimate mental wellness solution. So what is actually going wrong? The first problem is what I call the monk mode trap. When most people sit down to meditate for the first time, they have an image in their head. The serene person, cross-legged, hands resting perfectly, face radiating calm, and consciously or unconsciously, that becomes the bar. So they sit down and nothing happens, or worse, everything happens. The thoughts rush in, the to-do list appears, the body gets restless, and within minutes the person concludes, I am doing this wrong. But here's what's actually happening neurologically. You live in 2026. Your brain has been rewired by a decade or more of hyper-stimulating digital input. Notifications, social feeds, rapid cut content, constant context switching. At a structural level, your brain has adapted to expect a new stimulus every few seconds. Sitting in silence is not your brain's natural state anymore. It is the opposite of what your trained nervous system expects. And the brain does not just politely wait, it protests. And here's the kicker that most meditation teachers will never say out loud. Trying harder to be calm is often exactly what's keeping you stressed. There's a well-documented phenomenon called ironic process theory, demonstrated by social psychologist Daniel Wegner, which shows that the more deliberate effort you put into not thinking about something, the more your brain fixates on it. Telling yourself, don't think, just be present, triggers the exact mental surveillance loop that makes your mind louder. It's a trap built directly into the instruction itself. If you have ever sat down to meditate and ended up more anxious after than before, that's why. You were fighting a battle your conscious mind was never designed to win. The solution starts not with trying harder, it starts with changing the battlefield entirely. So now you know why the effort backfires, but the real question is what's your brain actually doing in there when you try to sit still? Because what I'm going to show you next changes how you see the entire mental wellness industry. Let me take you inside your brain for a moment. The foundational instruction of classical mindfulness is clear your mind. It sounds intuitive, it sounds achievable,
Except it's completely neurologically impossible. Your brain doesn't have an off switch, ever. What neuroscientists call the default mode network, a collection of interconnected brain regions, becomes more active the moment you stop focusing on an external task. The instant you close your eyes and disengage from the outside world, your brain's internal chatter network turns on at full volume. This is not a design flaw. It is the brain doing its job, processing, consolidating, problem-solving, running future simulations. The default mode network is in many ways what makes us human. But for someone who just sat down with the intention to think about nothing, it feels like their brain is actively working against them. Here's the part that I find genuinely unsettling about mainstream mindfulness instruction. When you sit and observe your thoughts without understanding this mechanism, you're sometimes inadvertently training your attention to focus on your own anxiety. You're watching worry thoughts appear, labeling them, trying to release them, and in that process reinforcing their neurological weight. For people with a natural tendency towards ruminative thinking, traditional mindfulness can actually amplify anxious patterns before it helps them. The research on this is not widely discussed, but it exists. So here's the insight I want to give you right now, before we even get to the full technique. You cannot think your way out of a physiological stress response. Read that again. You cannot think your way out of a physiological stress response, but you can breathe your way out of it. This is the concept I call the manual override, and the reason it works is purely anatomical. Your autonomic nervous system controls your stress response through two channels, fight or flight, and rest and digest. The technical names are sympathetic and parasympathetic. Here's what almost no one tells you. You have almost no direct voluntary control over the sympathetic system. You can't consciously command your cortisol to drop or your heart rate to slow. Those processes sit behind an autonomic firewall. But the breath is the only bodily function that is simultaneously involuntary, your body breathes without you thinking, and voluntary. You can consciously control it right now, this second, if you choose. And because of how the diaphragm, lungs, and vagus nerve are anatomically intertwined, that voluntary control of the breath is essentially a back-channel access point into your otherwise locked nervous system. Stop fighting the mind. Take control of the body. The mind will follow every time.
Now you have the why, the back channel into the system. But the how, the precise biological timing, the specific nerve pathway, the exact reason 4 minutes and not 40, that is what we are getting into next. And this part, most people have never heard explained this clearly. Here is the part most people skipped, and it is the actual reason the method works. I want you to understand the vagus nerve, because once you do, 4 minutes will never seem arbitrary again. The vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve in the human body. It runs from your brainstem through your neck, your chest, your heart, your lungs, your diaphragm, and into your gut. It is the primary information highway of your parasympathetic nervous system, your biological stand-down signal. Here's the detail that changes everything. Approximately 80% of the signals traveling along the vagus nerve are moving upward from the body to the brain, not the other way around. Your body is constantly reporting to your brain. When you breathe in a specific mechanical pattern, one that engages the diaphragm fully and follows a deliberate rhythm, you are sending a high-volume signal up that nerve to the brain that says, "The threat is over. We are safe. Stand down." The brain listens, because the body trusts the brain far more than it trusts conscious thought. Now, why 4 minutes precisely? This comes from what we understand about cortisol dynamics and heart rate variability. When you activate a stress response, cortisol floods your bloodstream and persists. This is why you can still feel anxious an hour after a stressful meeting. The chemistry is still circulating. But research on diaphragmatic breathing shows that rhythmic vagal nerve engagement begins producing measurable shifts in heart rate variability, HRV, our most reliable real-time metric for nervous system state, within 60 to 90 seconds. Full physiological shift, sympathetic to parasympathetic dominance, requires sustained engagement for 2 to 4 minutes, 240 seconds. That is the biological tipping point. Before that threshold, the signal is real, but the system has not fully flipped. After 240 seconds of proper diaphragmatic breathing, the vagal activation is sufficient to create a genuine, measurable state change. Your cortisol is dropping, your heart rate is dropping, your HRV is climbing, your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for clear thinking, decision-making, and emotional regulation, is coming back online because it is no longer being suppressed by stress hormones. And here is what makes this categorically different from a traditional meditation sit. Your mind does not have to participate. You can be thinking about your inbox, composing an angry email in your head, running through 14 things you forgot to do. None of that stops the vagal signal. The biology does not care what you're thinking. It cares what your diaphragm is doing. You now have the science. You know the nerve, the timing, the mechanism. Now, I'm going to give you the exact tool, and I'm going to walk you through it right here, right now. Not as a concept to read about later, as something your body can experience before this video ends. The tool is called the 4-4-6 reset. Here's the structure. Inhale for 4 counts, hold for 4 counts, exhale for 6 counts. That asymmetry, the extended exhale, is everything. Here's the physiology. Your heart rate increases slightly when you inhale and decreases when you exhale. This natural rhythm is called respiratory sinus arrhythmia, and it's a sign of a healthy, flexible nervous system. When you deliberately lengthen the exhale relative to the inhale, you are biasing that rhythm toward the calming side, toward parasympathetic activation, toward higher vagal tone. 6 counts out every time. That's the entire mechanism in one instruction. 1 count is approximately 1 comfortable second, not rigidly timed, just one slow, unhurried mental count. So, in through the nose for 4 slow counts, hold gently for 4, then out through the mouth, slowly, deliberately, completely for 6 counts. 4 minutes, approximately 12 to 15 full cycles. You can do this sitting at your desk right now, on a bus, in the back seat of a car, in a bathroom stall before a high-stakes presentation. You don't need silence, you don't need to close your eyes, you don't need to empty your mind. You need your diaphragm and a timer. One addition that dramatically increases the effectiveness for anyone working in high-stimulation environments, open offices, hospitals, anywhere loud, is what I call the invisible anchor. While you breathe, place one hand flat on your abdomen, just below the navel, under the desk if you need to, in your lap. No one has to see it. The tactile feedback of your hand rising and falling confirms you are breathing diaphragmatically, from the belly, not the chest. Chest breathing, which is what most stressed people default to without realizing it, actually activates the sympathetic system rather than deactivating it. One hand on the belly closes that loop instantly. Think of this as your digital fire extinguisher. We live in a notification economy. Every ping, every badge, every buzzing phone is a microstressor, a tiny signal telling your nervous system that something demands attention. Stack enough of those through a morning, and by noon, your baseline cortisol is elevated, your decision-making is impaired, and you're operating in a subclinical stress state so normalized you've stopped noticing it. The 4-4-6 reset, used at deliberate intervals, once mid-morning, once mid-afternoon, is a direct countermeasure to that accumulation. It's not a relaxation technique. It's a physiological recalibration. Before I tell you what the next 30 days look like, I want to spend 10 seconds on what the alternative looks like. Chronic, unmanaged stress doesn't just feel bad, it structurally damages the prefrontal cortex over time. It shortens telomeres, the biological caps on your chromosomes that determine cellular aging. It suppresses immune function and increases baseline inflammatory markers associated with cardiovascular disease. This is not catastrophizing, this is peer-reviewed biology. The question is not whether you have time for 4 minutes. The question is what you're spending the stress on. Now, here's what consistent practice builds. There's a concept in neuroscience called use-dependent plasticity. The neural pathways you activate regularly strengthened, the ones you don't weaken. Your brain is not fixed, it is being reshaped daily by the patterns you create. 4 minutes of daily vagal activation begins to structurally shift your nervous system's default baseline over time. After approximately 2 weeks of daily practice, research participants show measurable increases in resting HRV. Higher resting HRV correlates with better emotional regulation, faster cognitive recovery from stress, lower cardiovascular risk, and better sleep quality. After 30 days, the changes appear in behavior, not just biology.
Situations that previously triggered a strong stress response, a difficult conversation, an unexpected crisis, a high-stakes moment, begin to feel more manageable. Not because the situation changed, because your baseline changed.
I want you to close your eyes for one moment and picture yourself at day 31. Same job, same relationships, same pressures, but you are responding to all of it from a different nervous system baseline. Slower to activate, faster to recover, clearer in the moments that count. That is not a fantasy. That is use-dependent plasticity working across 30 days of 4-minute repetitions. And here's your metric to track it. Before you start, check your resting heart rate. First thing in the morning before you get out of bed. Note the number. Do the 4-4-6 reset every day for 30 days. Same time each morning works best. You are establishing a neurological anchor before the day's stress load has a chance to accumulate. At day 30, check your resting heart rate again. For most consistent practitioners, that number drops. 3 to 7 beats per minute is common, and every single beat that drops represents a measurable reduction in the chronic load your cardiovascular and nervous systems are carrying. That is not philosophy. That is not self-help language. That is a number on a screen telling you your body responded. Now, one thing I want to address directly before we close. Some of you are thinking right now, 4 minutes feels too simple. It cannot be enough. And I completely understand that instinct. We are conditioned to believe meaningful results require proportional effort, that hard things require hard processes. But complexity is not the same as effectiveness. And in stress physiology, simplicity has a biological advantage because simple practices get done. Complicated practices get abandoned. The research on habit formation is consistent. The single strongest predictor of whether someone maintains a wellness practice long-term is not motivation, not discipline, not willpower. It is friction. The lower the friction, the higher the compliance. 4 minutes, no equipment, no location requirement, that is a near zero friction practice. Consistency at 4 minutes will outperform perfection at 60 minutes. Every single time, because 4 minutes every day creates daily neural reinforcement. 60 minutes once a week creates sporadic activation with no compounding effect. Simple and consistent. The science is on that side every time. Let me bring this home. We took the breath today, and here's what grew from it. You now know why the silence of traditional meditation feels like a battle, because for your digitally rewired brain in 2026, it genuinely is one. You understand the neurological reason clear your mind was always an impossible instruction, and why that was never your failure. You know what the vagus nerve does, why the exhale is the key, and what is happening in your body during those 240 seconds. You have the 4-4-6 reset, a tool that requires no mat, no silence, no cleared schedule, and no willpower, just a diaphragm and a timer. And you have a way to prove it's working, your resting heart rate, tracked over 30 days. Here's your one action right now. Not after this video, not tonight, right now. Set a timer for 4 minutes. 4 counts in, 4 hold, 6 counts out. Hand on the belly. Repeat until the timer stops. 1 round right now. Because the most important shift does not happen when you understand it intellectually. It happens the first time your body has the experience. That first round creates the first imprint. Everything else builds from there. If something in this conversation landed differently than what you usually hear, if the manual override concept or the default mode network or the ironic process trap was the thing that finally made it click, I want to know. Leave that in the comments. Tell me which part changed how you see this. I read every one of those, and your answer tells me exactly where to go deeper next. One more thing. Subscribe to this channel, not for a generic more content promise, because next week we go directly into what happens to your prefrontal cortex under chronic stress and how to use this exact same vagal mechanism to rebuild executive function. That video is the direct continuation of what you just learned today. It's the level 2 of this system. If today mattered, that one matters even more. I'll see you there. We take the breath so we can grow the life.